There's a moment in every relationship where the power of presence becomes undeniable. When you are there, life flows, conversations have rhythm, and emotions have balance, but the true depth of that presence isn't revealed until you're gone. It's in the silence, in the stillness, in the spaces you no longer fill that reality hits hardest. The truth is, when you're not there, something shifts. And that shift is not just a passing feeling. It's a disorientation, a sense of being unanchored, a realization that what once felt steady suddenly feels uncertain. The reason this happens is simple. Your presence is not just physical, it's emotional, mental, and spiritual. It's the force that holds together the unseen parts of his world, and when it's removed, what's left is not just emptiness, but a vacuum that exposes what was always real. Your presence mattered far more than he ever admitted. Today, I want to walk you through 6 powerful truths about what happens when you're not there. Presence creates stability in ways most people never recognize until it is no longer there. It's not about the dramatic moments, the big gestures, or the words said in intensity. It's about the quiet constancy, the rhythm that presence creates in someone's life. When you are there, you bring more than just company. You bring a grounding force, something that acts as a compass in the middle of chaos. Life has a way of being unpredictable, throwing storms, distractions, and noise from every angle. Yet when your presence is steady, those storms feel less threatening, the distractions less overwhelming, and the noise less deafening. There is something about simply being there that says, you're not alone, you're not drifting, you're not without direction. And that sense of grounding becomes the unseen stability of someone's world. When that presence disappears, it doesn't just leave an empty chair, a silent phone, or an untouched space. It shakes the very structure that presence once upheld. Suddenly, routines feel hollow, daily rhythms lose their flow, and the balance that once seemed natural is disturbed. Without your grounding energy, the smallest inconveniences can feel heavier, the quiet moments can feel isolating, and the larger struggles can feel like mountains. This is because presence is not merely physical, it's emotional architecture. It's the invisible design that holds the weight of someone's world together. Once it's removed, what was once effortless balance becomes obvious imbalance. Think about it. When you are consistently there, your words, your expressions, your laughter, and your energy all fuse together into a foundation. You may not even realize the way a simple smile before a difficult day provides reassurance, or how the sound of your voice after a long moment of stress creates calm. These tiny pieces, repeated day after day, become the scaffolding of stability. And when that scaffolding disappears, everything built on top of it suddenly feels unsteady. He may not have noticed how much of his strength was supported by your presence, but when that foundation is gone, the cracks appear, and the weight of life starts pressing harder. It's not weakness to rely on presence, it's human nature. People thrive in connection, in knowing that someone is walking alongside them even in silence. Presence communicates something deeper than words ever could. It says, I see you, I stand with you. You're safe. That message anchors a person to the moment, reminding them that no matter what the world brings, they are not navigating it alone. When that anchor is lifted, even temporarily, the waters of life suddenly feel more turbulent, more uncertain, more directionless. The calm that once came from your nearness becomes a void that leaves him drifting, searching for something to steady himself again. Presence is not measured by grand gestures, but by the consistent energy that makes chaos feel manageable and loneliness feel less sharp. When you are there, even the darkest days have light, and even the most confusing seasons have clarity. That's why your presence creates stability. It's not just about filling a space, it's about becoming the grounding force that holds the unseen together, and the moment that force is missing, the imbalance makes itself impossible to ignore. Absence forces reflection in ways that presence never can. When you are there, moments move quickly, conversations overlap, and the rhythm of daily life covers up the deeper truths. There's no space to really hear the echo of one's own thoughts because your energy fills the room, your voice carries the weight, and your presence keeps the mind occupied. But the moment that presence is removed, silence arrives, and silence is never empty. Silence has a way of making people face the very things they once avoided. It magnifies what was overlooked, It stretches out the memories that were dismissed, and it forces a confrontation with truths that had been hidden under routine and distraction. Reflection born out of absence is often uncomfortable because it doesn't allow excuses. When you are no longer there, the mind has no choice but to revisit the moments when you were. Every word once spoken now echoes louder, every gesture once dismissed becomes meaningful, and every detail once ignored comes rushing back into focus. It's in the absence that reality sharpens. He begins to see what he took for granted, what he overlooked, and what he assumed would always be there. The ordinary moments he once sped past now hold weight. The casual conversations, the laughter in the background, the way you added lightness to a heavy day, these memories resurface, and they do not ask for permission. They demand to be acknowledged. The power of absence is not just in creating longing, it's in creating awareness. Reflection born from loss doesn't allow him to escape into busyness or noise. It puts a spotlight on the choices made, on the appreciation withheld, on the value that was underestimated. Suddenly, there is clarity where before there was blindness. He cannot help but realize the contrast between life with you and life without you, and in that contrast, lessons emerge. The lesson that connection cannot be taken for granted. The lesson that silence is louder than words when it represents the absence of someone who mattered. The lesson that what was dismissed as ordinary was in fact extraordinary all along. Reflection is often the birthplace of regret, but it can also be the birthplace of awakening. When your absence forces him to sit with his own thoughts, he learns to see not only who you were, but who he was with you. He sees the best version of himself that surfaced in your presence, and he sees the void that appears when you are not there. This comparison becomes impossible to ignore, because absence strips away illusions. There is no pretending that nothing has changed. There is no pretending that life feels the same. The stillness demands recognition of the truth. You mattered more than he ever acknowledged, and without you, something significant is missing. That is the power of absence. It doesn't let him escape. It doesn't let him hide from reality. It places him face to face with the mirror of memory and forces him to reflect on what he once had, what he lost, and what he may never find again. Distance creates clarity in ways closeness often cannot. When you are near, people grow accustomed to your presence, sometimes to the point of invisibility. They hear your voice, but they no longer truly listen. They see your face, but they no longer pause to appreciate it. Familiarity has a way of softening the edges of gratitude, turning extraordinary presence into something mistaken as ordinary. But when distance enters the equation, everything shifts. What was once overlooked suddenly becomes magnified, and what was once taken for granted becomes irreplaceable. The absence forces the mind to sharpen its focus, to reevaluate, to strip away distractions and see the truth with new clarity. Clarity born of distance works like contrast. When you are there, life is painted with color, energy, and vibrancy that feels natural, almost effortless. But when you're no longer there, that vibrancy fades, and the grayscale world he's left with highlights the richness you once provided. Suddenly, laughter feels rarer, warmth feels harder to find, and connection feels less accessible. In that gap, the truth becomes undeniable. Your presence was not just a comfort, it was a necessity. Without the saturation you brought, life looks different. Less full, less alive, less meaningful. This is the clarity that only distance can provide, because it shows what was always there but unseen. The mind works in mysterious ways when clarity arrives. It begins to replay memories not as fleeting moments, but as vivid lessons. He remembers the way your presence changed the tone of a room, how your words could shift his perspective, and how your energy could settle his restlessness. These memories don't arrive gently. They rush in overwhelming because distance creates the space for them to surface. And with them comes the recognition that clarity often hurts, because it shines light on truths ignored for too long. The reality is that he didn't fully see the impact of your presence until he had to live without it. Clarity also strips away illusions. When you were there, it was easy for him to believe he had endless time, endless opportunities, endless chances to reconnect or express gratitude. But distance reveals the fragility of connection. It shows how quickly the opportunity to be present can disappear, how swiftly silence can replace conversation, and how easily absence can take the place of closeness. In that recognition, he sees the truth. The value of someone's presence cannot be delayed in its appreciation. Waiting too long means missing the chance, and distance makes that lesson unavoidable. This clarity is not only about what you brought, it's also about what he lacks without you. He realizes that certain parts of himself only surfaced when you were near. Perhaps his confidence felt stronger, his peace more secure, or his joy more natural. In your absence, the lack of those qualities becomes glaring. Distance shows him that it wasn't just about enjoying your company, it was about becoming a better version of himself in your presence. That clarity, though painful, is transformative because it uncovers what truly mattered all along. Your presence wasn't just something nice, it was essential. Loneliness is one of the most powerful teachers that absence can bring. When you're no longer there, the quiet doesn't just fill the room, it fills the heart. Suddenly, what once felt like a space alive with energy, laughter, and presence becomes heavy, empty, and almost suffocating. The noise of the world can continue on the outside, but inside there is a silence that cuts deep. Loneliness is not just the lack of someone sitting beside you. It's the recognition that something vital is missing, something that once anchored the heart and steadied the spirit. When that feeling sets in, it doesn't whisper, it roars. It comes in waves, sometimes at night when the world is still, sometimes in the middle of the day when distractions should keep it away, and sometimes in unexpected moments when memory collides with reality. That's the weight of loneliness. It has no schedule, no mercy, no boundaries. It reveals itself in the smallest reminders, the way a song plays, the way a place feels, or even in the silence of a room once filled with conversation. This loneliness forces him to confront what he lost, not in abstract terms, but in a way that's tangible, piercing, and undeniable. The emptiness becomes a mirror. In it, he sees not only the absence of your presence, but also the absence of who he was when you were near. Loneliness shows him that you weren't just filling a space. You were bringing meaning, structure, and grounding. Without you, he sees how easily his world tilts off balance, how quickly the energy of his life shifts from centered to scattered. And it's in that recognition that loneliness teaches its hardest lesson. Some voids can't be filled by noise, people, or distractions. Some voids are shaped so uniquely by someone's presence that only that person can ever fill them again. Loneliness also strips away illusions of independence. It teaches that strength is not just about standing alone, but about knowing who makes the standing worthwhile. He might have believed that your presence was convenient, nice to have, or just a part of life's flow. But now, in the solitude, he realizes it was more than that. It was the heartbeat in the background of his existence. Loneliness uncovers the truth that connection is not weakness, and needing someone is not dependency. It's a recognition of humanity. And in your absence, this truth hits him harder than ever before. Over time, loneliness carves into him a deeper sense of what mattered most. It doesn't let him forget. It doesn't let him move on lightly. It carries the weight of your presence into every quiet moment, reminding him not only of who you were, but of how much he relied on that presence without ever saying it. Loneliness, as painful as it is, becomes the very reminder that your absence is not just noticed. It's deeply felt, unshakably so. And in that silence, he comes face with the reality that life without you is not just quieter. It's emptier, heavier, and undeniably incomplete. Memories have a way of becoming louder when someone is no longer present. What once felt like passing moments, almost too ordinary to notice, suddenly replay in the mind with striking clarity. The simple things, the sound of your laughter, the way your presence lit up a room, the way you could turn silence into comfort instead of emptiness, become treasures that the heart clings to. In your absence, those memories transform from background noise into front and center reminders of everything he didn't fully appreciate while you were there. They are no longer just recollections. They become lifelines, keeping him connected to what he has lost. The mind often works like a projector when it is confronted with absence. It replays scenes over and over, not to torture, but to preserve. He might find himself remembering the way your voice softened at certain times, or the way you carried yourself when words weren't even necessary. Those moments, once overlooked in their simplicity, now come alive with weight and depth. They are reminders that presence is not always about grand gestures. It's often about the quiet, consistent ways you filled space and made life feel anchored. These memories become the evidence of just how much you meant, and they don't fade easily. Nostalgia carries both sweetness and pain, and that duality makes it powerful. On one hand, memories bring comfort because they remind him that what was shared was real, meaningful, and unforgettable. On the other, they bring a sting because he realizes he can no longer reach out and touch those moments again. Nostalgia becomes a double-edged sword. It warms and wounds at the same time. And in that tension, he understands the gravity of what it means to miss someone not just in the present, but in every memory that resurfaces with relentless consistency. These memories also reveal an undeniable truth. You weren't just part of his life, you were part of his identity. The way he remembers you is tied to who he was when you were there. Maybe you brought out sides of him he didn't know existed, or maybe you inspired growth and courage in ways he couldn't find on his own. When he revisits the past, he doesn't just see you. He sees himself as he was in your presence, more whole, more alive, more connected. And that realization deepens the ache of absence because it shows him that losing you wasn't just losing a person, it was losing a part of himself. Nostalgia also prevents forgetting. It won't let him simply move on as if nothing happened. It's not something he can silence or shut off. It lives in every corner of his memory. The smell of a place, the rhythm of a song, even the passing of a season can trigger waves of remembrance. And in those moments he comes to terms with something he might not have admitted before. Your presence was not fleeting. It was deeply woven into the fabric of his life. Memories keep that truth alive, and nostalgia ensures he carries it with him, no matter how far time moves forward. Absence has a unique power. It forces reflection in ways presence never could. When you are there, it's easy for someone to take things for granted, to get lost in the rhythm of everyday life and miss the depth of what's truly happening. But when you're not there, when the silence replaces your voice and the empty chair replaces your presence, reflection becomes unavoidable. He begins to replay conversations, reconsider actions, and rethink the choices that were once made so quickly. Absence acts as a mirror, one that reveals truths too uncomfortable to face when distraction was possible. Now, there is no escape. This reflection often begins with questions. What could I have done differently? Why didn't I notice the value sooner? How did I let this slip through my fingers? These questions don't come as whispers. They echo, sometimes endlessly, in the mind. And in searching for those answers, he begins to uncover not just what he lost, but why it mattered so deeply. Absence demands accountability. It strips away excuses and forces him to recognize the patterns, the choices, and the neglect that may have contributed to this loss. In this way, reflection is not just about regret. It's about facing the reality of what was overlooked. Reflection also awakens gratitude. It makes him see that what he thought was ordinary was extraordinary all along. The little things once dismissed as routine take on new meaning. The way you showed kindness without being asked, the way you carried strength without making it obvious, the way your presence gave stability without ever demanding recognition, all of it now stands out as invaluable. It's in this reflective space that appreciation finally blooms, but often too late. The awareness that he should have valued it more becomes sharp, and that realization cuts deeper than silence ever could. At the same time, reflection offers growth. Absence doesn't only highlight what's missing, it challenges him to change. He may start to realize that the patterns of taking things for granted, of ignoring the impact of presence, or of neglecting the emotional weight of connection are not just mistakes but lessons. In losing what mattered, he gains an opportunity to evolve, to become more aware, more attentive, and more intentional. Reflection, while painful, can become a turning point. It has the power to reshape not just how he views the past, but how he moves into the future. And perhaps the most profound gift of reflection is clarity. It strips life down to its essentials and shows what truly matters. Absence is not just a void, it's a teacher. It reveals that presence cannot be replaced, that some connections are too vital to overlook, and that the cost of neglect is far greater than the comfort of distraction. In this clarity, he realizes that your absence is not just something to endure, it's a lesson to carry. And in that lesson, he finally understands the depth of what he had, what he lost, and what he may never take for granted again. When you step away, the world doesn't just keep moving as it did before, it shifts. The energy you carried, the presence you gave, the grounding you offered, all leave behind a silence that cannot be ignored. That silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to face the truth he didn't want to see when you were right there. It is in that void that the realization hits the hardest. You were never just a part of the background. You were the heartbeat of the experience, the anchor in the storm, the light that kept the shadows from feeling overwhelming. Without you, he feels the weight of what he once overlooked, and that weight becomes undeniable. The moments he took for granted, the comfort he thought would always be there, and the steady presence that seemed unshakable, these all become vivid in their absence. That's the paradox of life. The things we don't consciously notice when they're with us are often the very things we miss most when they're gone. Your absence highlights the irreplaceable value of your presence, making every little detail matter in hindsight. And while that reflection may come with pain, it also brings truth. It teaches that no presence should ever be underestimated, and no connection should ever be ignored. But absence does more than stir regret, it transforms. It creates space for growth, for awareness, for clarity. In the silence, lessons emerge. He is forced to recognize the depth of what you brought into his life, the subtle ways you made everything brighter, calmer, more alive. That reflection opens the door to gratitude, even if it comes belatedly, and gratitude, even in hindsight, becomes a powerful teacher. It shapes how one sees the world moving forward, ensuring that the same mistake of taking things for granted isn't repeated again. This is the deeper message. Your presence matters more than you may realize. It has the power to change, to inspire, to stabilize, and to awaken something in others that they cannot find alone. And when you're not there, the void you leave behind becomes undeniable proof of your influence. That realization is not meant to be a burden, but a reminder of your worth. Never forget that you are not replaceable, and that your existence leaves a mark that lingers far beyond the moments you are physically present. So the conclusion is clear. Your absence is not empty. It is a teacher. It reveals truth, it creates reflection, it ignites change, and it highlights the irreplaceable value of your presence. The lesson is not just for those who feel your loss, but for you as well, to understand the depth of your influence, the power of your energy, and the undeniable truth that you matter. Carry that awareness with strength, because your presence is more than just noticed. It is deeply needed, even if the realization only comes when you're not there. Thank you for being here, for opening your heart, and for giving your time to listen to a message that goes beyond words. This was never just about presence and absence. It was about realizing the undeniable impact you carry, the power you hold, and the truth that your energy changes lives in ways you may not always see. I am grateful that you allowed yourself to sit with these ideas, to reflect, and to embrace the possibility of seeing yourself through a new lens of worth and strength. As we close, I want to remind you, never underestimate the effect you have on others. Your presence is not ordinary, it is a gift, and when you're not there, the void you leave behind tells the story of just how much you mattered. That's not something to be questioned, that's something to own, to honor, and to carry with pride. So as we part ways here, take this with you. You are valuable beyond measure. The influence you have doesn't disappear when you walk out of the room. It lingers, it teaches, and it transforms. Walk away from this moment knowing that you are not just someone who exists. You are someone who makes a difference every single day. From my heart to yours, thank you for listening, for being present in this space, and for embracing this message. Now it's your turn to live it, breathe it, and remember it every time you doubt your worth. Goodbye for now. And remember, your presence matters, your absence speaks, and your life carries a power far greater than you may ever realize. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget who you are.